He was just reading on the beach, minding his own business. Then her daughter ran up, saying, "Mommy wants you." That one moment shifted everything he thought he knew. I was stretched out on the warm sand of Driftwood Cove, the quiet beach in Harbor's Edge, Oregon, where the world seemed to slow down to the rhythm of the waves. The sun beat down steadily, turning the air hazy and golden, and I could feel the grains shifting under my back as I turned a page in my book. At 23, fresh out of college with a degree in environmental science, I was using this summer to catch my breath before the real world hit. Job hunts loomed ahead, but right now all that mattered was the story in my hands, a tale of ocean mysteries that mirrored the vast, unpredictable sea before me. The beach was sparse that day, just a few locals strolling with dogs or kids splashing in the shallows far off. I savored the solitude, the kind that let my thoughts drift without interruption. Then, out of nowhere, a little girl appeared, trotting across the sand toward me. She was small, maybe 7 or 8, with sun-kissed pigtails bouncing and a yellow swimsuit covered in printed seashells that caught the light. Her approach was direct, like she had a purpose, and she stopped just short of my towel, kicking up a puff of sand that settled on my book. I lowered the novel, marking my spot with a finger, and looked up, curious, but not uneasy. Kids like her were part of the beach's charm, unpredictable bursts of energy in an otherwise calm scene. "Hi there," she said, her voice piping over the crash of waves, squinting at me with one eye closed against the sun. "Are you the one with the blue backpack?" I glanced at my faded navy backpack beside me, crammed with essentials, sunscreen, a half-empty water bottle, my keys, and a snack bar. "Yeah, that's mine. What's going on?" Her face lit up with a toothy grin, missing a front tooth that made her look even more endearing. "My mommy wants to talk to you." She pointed emphatically back toward a group of umbrellas about 50 yards away, where a woman sat cross-legged on a striped towel, her gaze fixed on the horizon as if lost in thought. A flicker of confusion stirred in me. From this distance, the woman was a silhouette. Dark hair pulled back, oversized sunglasses shielding her face. I didn't recognize her. Harbor's Edge was a small town, but I was only here for the summer, crashing at my aunt's weathered cottage on Elmwood Lane. Maybe she was a local who'd noticed me around, or perhaps it was something mundane like borrowing a phone charger. Still, the directness of it all felt odd, pulling me out of my quiet bubble. "Sure thing," I said, closing my book and standing up, brushing sand from my swim trunks. The grains clung stubbornly, warm against my skin. "Lead the way, kiddo." She grabbed my hand without a second thought, her tiny fingers sticky and sweet-smelling like she'd just finished an ice cream cone. As we walked, she chattered away, her energy infectious. "Mommy said you look like someone who knows stuff about the ocean. She's been watching the seagulls, but she needs help. Oh, and I'm Tessa. What's your name?" "Nolan," I replied, smiling down at her as we navigated the uneven sand. "Nolan Hargrove. Nice to meet you, Tessa." We reached the umbrella, its shadow a welcome relief from the sun's glare. The woman stood gracefully, sliding off her sunglasses to reveal eyes that were a deep, thoughtful brown. She was taller than I'd guessed, with an effortless poise that spoke of experience, of having navigated life's rougher waters. Her black one-piece swimsuit was simple, accented by a sheer cover-up that billowed softly in the breeze, and her skin had that natural tan from days spent outdoors. Up close, she seemed in her late 30s, around 38 perhaps. The subtle lines at the corners of her eyes and the confident way she carried herself hinted at years I'd yet to live. Her voice, when she spoke, was warm and measured, with a faint accent that suggested East Coast origins, maybe Philadelphia or nearby. "Thank you for coming over, Nolan," she said, offering her hand. Her grip was steady, reassuring, her nails short and practical. "I'm Miriam Voss." "Sorry to pull you away from your book. Tessa insisted you were the one to ask." "No worries at all," I said, releasing her hand but feeling the brief contact linger. Tessa had already plopped down, digging into the sand with a plastic shovel, oblivious to any adult subtleties. "What do you need help with?" Miriam hesitated for a beat, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear as the wind teased it free. She glanced out at the rolling waves, then back to me, her expression a mix of apology and something harder to pin down. Curiosity, maybe. "It's probably silly, but my phone's dead and I wanted to check the tide times. We're hoping to hunt for shells later, but I don't want us getting stranded by high water. Do you have signal or know the schedule?" I fished out my phone from the backpack, the screen lighting up with a weak but usable signal. I'd downloaded a local tide app for my beach outings, and I pulled it up quickly. "Low tide hits at 3:15 p.m., high around 9:30 tonight. Plenty of time for shells." Relief softened her features and she smiled, a genuine one that reached her eyes. "That's great. We've only been here a week, renting on Willow Crest Drive. Still getting the hang of how things work around here." Willow Crest was just a short walk from my aunt's place. The town was small enough for coincidences like that. We fell into easy talk about Harbor's Edge, the hidden gems like the strong coffee at Drift Inn Cafe on Main Street, or the sunset views from the Lighthouse Trail. Tessa piped up with questions about my book, demanding to know if there were sharks in it. Her shovel paused mid-dig. Miriam watched the exchange with a quiet amusement, her gaze lingering on me a fraction longer than casual, making me wonder if I was imagining the spark. As the conversation tapered, I felt an unexpected reluctance to leave. There was something about Miriam's presence, calm yet layered, like the ocean's surface hiding depths below. But I excused myself, heading back to my spot with a wave. Settling in again, the book felt less engaging, my mind replaying the encounter. Why send Tessa? Was it truly just the tides, or something more? Hours later, as the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in oranges and pinks, I packed up and trudged toward the parking lot along Shoreline Path. That's when I spotted them again. Miriam and Tessa wrestling a heavy cooler into the back of an older SUV parked near my bike. Tessa saw me first, waving enthusiastically. "Nolan, come say goodbye." I approached, the gravel crunching underfoot, and Miriam turned, a flicker of surprise crossing her face before she smiled. "Leaving too?" "Yeah, back to the cottage. That cooler looks heavy. Need a lift with it?" She paused, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand, then nodded. "If it's no trouble." I hoisted it easily, our hands brushing as I slid it into the trunk, her fingers cool from the shaded air, mine still warm from the sun-baked sand. The touch was fleeting, but it sent a subtle jolt through me, one I tried to ignore. She thanked me, her voice sincere, and as I stepped back, Tessa chimed in, "Mommy, can Nolan come for ice cream with us? Pretty please?" Miriam chuckled, a light, melodic sound that eased the moment. "Tessa, sweetie, Nolan might have other plans." Truth was, my evening was wide open, just a quiet dinner alone at the cottage. Actually, I wouldn't mind, if it's okay. Miriam's eyes met mine, holding for a heartbeat longer, something unspoken flickering there. "All right then, there's a place on Bayview Avenue, Salted Caramel Haven. You can follow us." I nodded, unlocking my bike but opting to walk it alongside their car for the short distance. The ice cream shop was charming, with outdoor tables overlooking the harbor where boats bobbed gently. We ordered cones, Tessa's piled with rainbow sprinkles, Miriam's mint chip, mine rocky road, and sat at a weathered picnic table as the light faded. Conversation flowed naturally. Miriam shared she was a freelance graphic designer, recently divorced, seeking a fresh start in this coastal town for the summer. Tessa's dad was no longer involved, she mentioned offhand, her tone even, but laced with a shadow of past hurt that made my chest tighten. I opened up about my studies, the uncertainty of post-grad life, dreams of marine research that felt both exciting and daunting. Tessa entertained us with napkin drawings of sea creatures, her laughter pulling us all in. But underneath, I caught Miriam's glances, thoughtful, appraising, stirring a warmth I hadn't expected. As twilight settled, we said goodbyes. "Thanks for the company," Miriam said, her hand resting briefly on my arm, the touch light but deliberate. It's been refreshing. Walking back to the cottage, the cool night air clearing my head, I couldn't shake the day's pull. She was older, a mother rebuilding her life. I was just starting mine. Yet, that brief connection lingered, like the echo of waves long after they'd crashed. The following morning, the beach called again, and there they were under the umbrella. Tessa ran up, but this time Miriam waved me over directly. We spent hours chatting, books, travels, life's twists. She confided more. At 38, post-divorce, she felt like piecing together a new puzzle. I helped with a sandcastle, our hands meeting in the damp sand, the contact innocent yet charged. As evening approached, Miriam suggested dinner at her rental. Pasta. Casual. I agreed, pushing aside the nagging voice about boundaries. Inside the house on Willow Crest, with its nautical decor and warm lighting, we ate at a table by the garden window. Tessa nodded off early, leaving us with wine and hushed talk. Miriam's stories revealed layers of vulnerability, her eyes holding mine in the dim light. When she passed me in the kitchen, the air hummed with unspoken tension. This was only the beginning, but I had no idea how deeply it would pull me in. The kitchen in Miriam's rental on Willow Crest Drive was warm, the lingering scent of garlic and basil from our pasta dinner mixing with the salty breeze slipping through the open windows. The old house creaked softly, its wooden floors settling as the night deepened, and from upstairs came the faint sound of Tessa's snores, a reminder of the life Miriam carried on her shoulders. I stood by the counter, my fingers wrapped around a glass of red wine, the liquid catching the glow of the pendant lamp above. At 23, I was used to fleeting moments. College parties, late-night study sessions, quick hellos that never turned into more. But this, standing here with Miriam Voss, felt like standing on a cliff's edge, the drop both thrilling and terrifying. She dried her hands on a dish towel, her movements slow, almost too careful, as if she was buying time. Her dark hair had come loose from its tie, framing her face in soft waves, and the dim light softened the lines around her eyes, lines that spoke of years, of joys and losses I could only imagine. She was 38, she'd mentioned earlier, her voice casual but heavy with the weight of starting over. Up close in this small kitchen with its chipped blue cabinets and mismatched plates, she seemed both grounded and untethered, like a ship waiting for the right wind. "Thanks for the help with cleanup," she said, her voice low to keep from waking Tessa. She stepped closer, leaning against the counter beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her presence, though we weren't touching. Not many guys your age would stick around for dishes and a kid's bedtime. I set my glass down, the clink loud in the quiet. "Beats eating alone at the cottage," I said, aiming for light but hearing the edge in my voice. "Tessa's a character, and you're not what I expected." Her lips curved into a small smile, but her eyes held something guarded. "What did you expect?" I hesitated, my pulse quickening. "I don't know. Someone less real, maybe." The words felt clumsy, but they were honest. I'd met plenty of people this summer, locals at the Drift-In Cafe, tourists at the harbor, but none had left me feeling like this, like every word mattered. She folded the towel, setting it aside with deliberate care, her fingers lingering on the fabric. "Real," she repeated, almost to herself. "That's a new one." Her gaze flicked to mine, then away, settling on the window where the garden's lavender swayed in the dark. "It's been a long time since I've had a night like this. Just talking, no agenda. It's disarming." That word, disarming, hung between us, heavy with meaning I couldn't quite grasp. Was she warning me or confessing something? I wanted to ask, but instead, I nodded toward the living room, where a bookshelf stood against a wall painted the color of sea foam. "You've got a lot of books in there. Mind if I check them out?" Her shoulders relaxed, and she led the way, her bare feet soft on the hardwood. The shelves were a treasure trove, novels with worn spines, art books glossy with color, sketch pads tucked between them like secrets. I pulled out a copy of The Sea, by Iris Murdoch, its edges softened from years of handling. "This one's intense," I said, turning it over in my hands. "You into it?" "It's my favorite," she said, standing close enough that I caught the faint citrus of her shampoo. "It's about longing, about chasing things you can't hold on to. It strips you bare." She paused, her voice dropping. "What about you? Got a book that gets under your skin?" I thought for a moment, my thumb tracing the book's title. "The Old Man and the Sea," maybe. It's quieter, but it's about fighting for something even when you know you might lose. I looked at her, our eyes locking, and this time, she didn't look away. The air thickened, like the moment before a wave breaks. We sank onto the couch, the book resting between us like a shared confession. The conversation flowed, about stories we loved, places we'd been, the lives we were trying to build. She opened up about her past, a design career in Philadelphia, a marriage that started with hope but ended in shards. "I was 30 when Tessa came," she said, her voice softening as she glanced toward the stairs. "Thought I had it all mapped out. Then you hit 38, and you're in a new town, piecing yourself back together." I shared my own uncertainties, graduating into a world that felt too big, chasing a career in marine research that seemed both close and impossibly far. "I'm 23, I said, matching her openness. "Supposed to be fearless, but most days I'm just hoping I don't screw it up." She nodded, her eyes steady, seeing me in a way that made me feel exposed but not judged. "You're honest, Nolan. That's not as common as you'd think." Her hand rested on the couch, inches from mine, and the space between felt alive, pulsing with possibility. I wanted to close that gap, to touch her, but the weight of her words, her age, her daughter, her past, held me still. Then she stood abruptly, breaking the spell. "I need to check on Tessa." She vanished upstairs, leaving me alone with the hum of the house and my racing thoughts. I stared at the book in my hands, feeling like I'd stumbled into something bigger than myself, something I wasn't ready for but couldn't walk away from. When she returned, she carried a knitted blanket, draping it over the couch's armrest. "She's fast asleep," she said, sitting again, but this time at the far end, creating a safe distance. "Sorry. I just needed a moment." "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice tighter than I meant. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, her fingers twisting together. "It's been a while since I've let anyone get close, Nolan, even for something as simple as this." Her eyes met mine, raw and searching. "You're so young." "You don't need my complications." I swallowed, the words catching in my throat. "I don't mind complications," I said finally. "Everyone's got some. Mine's just figuring out who I'm supposed to be." She laughed, a soft, sad sound that cut through the quiet. "Yours is a backpack? Mine's a whole damn cargo ship." We talked on, the hours slipping away like sand through fingers. She showed me one of her sketch pads, pages filled with intricate pencil drawings, waves curling like poetry, cliffs jagged against stormy skies. I told her about my summers on research boats, the nights spent watching bioluminescent plankton light up the water like stars. Her eyes brightened at that, and she leaned closer, her shoulder brushing mine as she traced a sketch with her finger. At some point, she poured more wine, and we moved to the back porch, a small deck overlooking the garden where fireflies blinked in the lavender. The night air was cool, sharp with salt, and Miriam shivered, pulling her arms around herself. Without thinking, I shrugged off my denim jacket and offered it. She hesitated, then slipped it on, the sleeves too long, making her look both vulnerable and strong. The sight stirred something deep in me, something I didn't want to name. "Thanks," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She pointed to the sky, her breath visible in the chill. "See that? Orion. Tessa loves spotting it. We stood side by side, the stars sharp above us, her shoulder grazing mine. Neither of us moved away. The silence was heavy, charged with all we weren't saying. I wanted to ask what she felt, what this was, but the words stayed locked inside. Instead, I said, "I should probably head out soon." Her hand brushed mine as she turned, so light it might have been an accident. "You don't have to," she murmured, then caught herself, adding louder, "I mean, it's late. The roads are dark out there." I stayed. We sat on the deck, wine forgotten, talking until the night grew colder, our voices weaving a fragile bridge between us. When I finally left, the walk to my aunt's cottage was a blur, her touch lingering like the echo of a wave. I lay awake that night, replaying every glance, every word, knowing we were teetering on the edge of something neither of us could control. What happens next will unravel everything. Her next move will change us both forever. The morning after that night on the porch broke with a heavy mist rolling in from the sea, blanketing Harbor's Edge in a soft gray veil that muffled the usual sounds of the town. I woke in my aunt's cottage on Elmwood Lane, the sheets tangled around me, my mind replaying every detail from the evening before. The way Miriam's hand had brushed mine, the quiet vulnerability in her voice under the stars. At 23, I was no stranger to restless nights, but this felt different, like a current pulling me towards something deeper, something I wasn't sure I could handle. I brewed coffee in the cramped kitchen, the drip of the machine steady against the fog-dampened windows, staring out at the garden where droplets clung to the fern leaves like unshed tears. What was I doing? She was 38, a woman with a child and a past, rebuilding her life piece by piece, while I was just figuring out mine. My phone buzzed on the wooden counter, pulling me from my thoughts, a text from Miriam. "Tessa's asking for a hike. Lighthouse Trail at 10, if you're free." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, a mix of excitement and caution twisting in my gut. "I'll be there," I typed back, simple and sure, though inside I felt anything but. We met at the trailhead off Seaview Bluff, the path winding up the cliffs with the ocean roaring below, hidden in the mist. Tessa was a bundle of energy, darting ahead with a stick in hand, poking at rocks and calling out discoveries. Miriam walked beside me, her hiking boots crunching on the gravel, a light jacket zipped against the chill. Her hair was pulled back, a few strands escaping to frame her face, and her eyes held that same thoughtful depth, but now laced with something new, awareness, perhaps, of the shift between us. She was beautiful in her quiet strength, the kind that came from enduring storms, and it made the age gap feel both vast and insignificant. The trail climbed steadily, switchbacks cutting through wild grass and low shrubs dotted with dew. We talked at first about safe things, the fog that might lift by noon, the town's old lighthouse stories of shipwrecks and ghosts. Tessa interrupted with questions. "Nolan, do whales sing songs?" I spun a tale from my research days, describing the deep hums echoing through the water, exaggerating just enough to make her gasp in delight. Miriam smiled, watching us, but her glances my way carried weight, like she was measuring the space we'd crossed. As the mist thinned higher up, revealing glimpses of the endless Pacific, Miriam fell into step closer to me, while Tessa explored a rocky outcrop. "I'm glad you came," she said, her voice carrying over the wind whipping off the sea. "Tessa talks about you nonstop, and honestly, I needed this too." "Needed what?" I asked, glancing at her profile, the way the light caught the faint lines around her mouth. "A break from overthinking," she replied, her tone even but edged with fatigue. "The move here, the fresh start, it's all so much. Being around you, it's uncomplicated." "Or at least it feels that way." Her words echoed our porch talk, stirring that pull again, stronger now. We reached a viewpoint, a weathered bench bolted to the cliffside, overlooking waves that crashed like thunder below. Tessa sat on the ground, pulling crayons from her backpack to sketch the scene. Miriam and I took the bench, our legs close but not touching, the wood cool under my hands. The silence settled comfortably at first, the ocean's rhythm filling the gaps. But then it shifted, heavy with all we hadn't said. "I didn't plan on any of this," Miriam said suddenly, her gaze fixed on the horizon where sea met sky. "Running into you on the beach, Tessa dragging you over. At my age, with everything I've been through, it's messy." "Messy how?" I pressed gently, turning to face her, my heart thudding against my ribs. She met my eyes, her expression raw, vulnerable in a way that made me ache. "You're 23, Nolan, full of life ahead. I don't want to drag you into my world. Divorce scars, single parenting, starting over at 38. Her hand rested on the bench, fingers curling into the wood as if holding herself back. Without overthinking it, I placed my hand over hers, the warmth of her skin grounding me. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers relaxed slightly under mine. "Maybe I don't mind the mess," I said quietly, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "It feels real." "More than anything I've known," Tessa called out then, waving her drawing, a crooked lighthouse with 3 stick figures holding hands. We laughed, praising her artistry, but the moment lingered, the air between Miriam and me electric, charged with possibility. The hike down was quieter, Tessa's energy waning as the path leveled out. By the cars, she yawned widely. "Sandwiches at home?" Miriam suggested, her eyes flicking to mine. "I've got some ready." I followed them back to Willow Crest Drive, the house welcoming with its sea-scented rooms and scattered toys. Tessa ate her lunch quickly, then curled up on the couch for a nap, her drawing clutched in her hand. Miriam and I sat at the kitchen table, our plates half forgotten as the quiet enveloped us. The house felt intimate now, the walls echoing our unspoken thoughts. "I meant what I said up there," I ventured, pushing my plate aside. "About the mess. It doesn't scare me." She looked at me, her brown eyes searching, conflicted. "Nolan, I'm 38. You're just starting out. What are we even doing here?" "I don't know," I admitted, leaning forward. "But it feels right, doesn't it? Like something we both need." She stood, pacing to the window overlooking the garden, her arms crossed tightly. "It feels like a risk I can't afford. I've been burned before, trusting too soon, losing too much. And Tessa, she needs me steady, not chasing." "Whatever this is." I rose, stepping closer, close enough to smell the faint salt on her skin from the hike. "I'm not asking for promises. Just this moment." She turned, and we were inches apart, her breath quickening to match mine. Slowly, tentatively, she reached up, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw, sending a shiver down my spine. The touch was light, exploratory, but it ignited something deep. "We can't," she whispered, her voice trembling, but her body leaned in, contradicting her words. Then it happened. Our lips met, soft at first, hesitant like testing unknown waters. Hers were warm, tasting faintly of the sea air, and I pulled her closer, my hands on her waist, feeling the curve of her under my palms. She responded, her arms wrapping around my neck, the kiss deepening with a hunger we'd both held back. The world narrowed to that, the feel of her against me, the quiet gasp she made, the way time seemed to pause in the sunlit kitchen. We broke apart, breathless, her forehead resting against mine. "This shouldn't be happening," she said, but there was no regret in her tone, only a quiet acceptance. "I know," I replied, my thumb brushing her cheek, wiping away a stray tear I hadn't noticed before. "But what if it's what we both want?" She pulled back slightly, her eyes glistening with emotion. "Tessa could wake, and tomorrow—" Reality hits. I didn't push. We sat again, hands linked under the table, talking in hushed tones about fears we'd buried. Her divorce's lingering pain, the isolation of single motherhood, my doubts about the future, feeling like a kid playing at adulthood. Each word drew us closer, building a bridge over the gaps of age and experience. As the afternoon faded into evening, Tessa stirred, and the spell eased. We played games, her laughter filling the house, but Miriam's glances across the table held a new depth, promise mixed with caution. When it was time for me to go, she walked me to the door, the porch light casting long shadows. "Tomorrow?" I asked, lingering on the step. She nodded, then drew me into a brief but fierce embrace. "Be gentle with this, Nolan. It's fragile." That night, back at the cottage, I lay staring at the ceiling, the kiss replaying in vivid detail. We'd crossed a line, one drawn by society, by logic, by our own hesitations. But in that crossing, something true had emerged, raw, complicated, but undeniably real. The days that followed blurred into a secret rhythm. Mornings on the beach at Driftwood Cove, building sandcastles with Tessa while stealing glances at Miriam. Afternoons wandering the town, exploring the aquarium on Harbor Way with its tanks of glowing jellyfish. Picnics in the shaded park off Crescent Loop where wildflowers bloomed. Tessa saw me as a fun companion, but for Miriam and me, it was more. Stolen moments when Tessa napped or played ahead, quick kisses in the kitchen, hands brushing in ways that spoke volumes. One evening, after Tessa was tucked in, we returned to the porch, the stars brighter than ever. Miriam leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, the blanket draped over us both. "This feels like a stolen dream," she murmured, her fingers interlacing with mine. "But dreams have endings." "Not if we hold on," I said, kissing her temple, breathing in her scent. She turned, her eyes shining in the dim light. "I'm afraid, Nolan, of how much this means already, of losing it." I held her closer, my heart aching with the truth of her words. "Then let's make it count while we can." That night, I stayed longer. We moved to her room, the door clicking shut softly behind us. It wasn't hurried. It was slow, deliberate, like savoring a rare moment. Her body, shaped by time and motherhood, was a map of stories, soft curves, faint scars, and she guided me with a patience that made me feel seen, valued. At 38, she carried a grace I admired, teaching without words, drawing out emotions I'd kept hidden. Lying there afterward, tangled in the sheets, her head on my chest, she traced idle patterns